The Mystic Tie, a podcast for Freemasons. I am your host, Troy Sprue. You can find us online at mystictie.com. Email me feedback, guest suggestions, and any other questions at troy@mystictie.com. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/mystictie. What happens when the symbolic language of Freemasonry is taken off the tracing board and placed directly into your hands? Today I am joined by Brother Jonti Marks and Bridie Blaze, creators of the new Masonic Wisdom Cards, a deck for daily reflection. This beautifully illustrated 78-card deck explores Masonic symbols, working tools, virtues, sacred geometry, and philosophical ideas as prompts for contemplation, rather than divination. We discuss Bridie's striking folk art-inspired imagery, Jonti's contemplative approach to Masonic symbolism, the deck's relationship to tarot, and how symbols can become tools for memory, meditation, self-knowledge, and deeper Masonic study. Please welcome Brother Jonti Marks and Bridie Blaze. Welcome to the Mystic Tie, Jonti Marks, Bridie Blaze.
Thank you.
Thank you both for being here with me today. We were put in touch by Lewis Masonic about your new Masonic contemplation deck.
Yeah, that's right.
Why don't you guys give us an overview of that and we can talk about it a little bit.
Okay, shall I do that, Bridie?
Yeah.
Okay, it is a deck of 78 cards. Each card has a beautiful picture, a beautiful rendition of a Masonic symbol drawn by Bridie. They're very vibrant, they're very different. It strikes me that a Masonic symbol is a Masonic symbol. An ionic column is an ionic column, or a skirit is a skirit. There's not a huge amount of leeway that one can have with it. You can't invent a new type of skirit. But Bridie has brought something really beautiful and original, I think, to these drawings. They're very alive and, full of energy. Anyway, so each one of those 78 cards has a different Masonic symbol, and with the cards is a small booklet, and in the booklet there is a short piece of writing linked to the particular card. So each card has a number. You could, for example, just draw a card at random, look at the number, open the booklet to the corresponding symbol, find the same number in the booklet, and read a little bit about it. And the idea is that it will act as a kind of springboard to deeper thought, really. It's an invitation to just sit for a while and have a moment of quiet contemplation of the thing that in a way makes Freemasonry what it is, which is a system of symbols, veiled in allegory, but it's symbolic. The symbols of Freemasonry are key to what Freemasonry is. So if we can spend some time with that, I think that's a good thing. So that's the purpose of it. There are 78 cards, and there are traditionally 78 cards in a tarot deck. It's obviously not a tarot deck. It's not about trying to divine anything particular, but I feel like if you choose to just draw cards at random, then you're doing something that maybe tarot does, which is plugging into an energy of the universe and listening for messages, if you like, to see what's the universe saying to me today? What do I need to know today? What would help me today? If you choose to just go through them in order, as if you're reading a book, that's fine too. The lessons are as valid, but the fact that it's cards rather than a book gives you the opportunity to choose how you approach them. Shuffle them and just pick one off the top, or keep them in order. One guy who has received his deck said, "I'm a little bit OCD and I'm going to be spending a lot of time making sure these cards stay in order." So so that's cool. If he wants to do it that way, that's completely fine. But I think it's also a little bit of a kind of not fun, but like a light-hearted way of approaching Masonic learning, really. I think Masonic learning is important. We all agree that we should study, and this is just a new way of doing it, maybe.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the pictures on the Lewis Masonic website, the Masonic Wisdom deck, the Masonic Wisdom cards, and looking at the artwork. It's beautiful. Do you want to discuss a little bit some of the inspiration for some of these images?
Yeah, for sure. Um, it was a bit of a tricky process for me, but in the end, I think, as with collaboration usually does, then we ended up creating something quite special that we wouldn't have been able to create separately from each other. But I really wanted to bring my own personal style, or at least not forget my own personal style, but obviously these symbols and the meaning and all the layers behind each of them carry so much weight. So I wanted to take that very seriously in the research. But my personal style is based on folk art and is very organic. And I work a lot with things in nature, and it's very kind of free flowing and a little bit imperfect or a little bit wobbly. So I did want to bring that in as well. And I went back and forth for quite a few months on deciding exactly how I wanted these cards to look. I started by making a border that's repeated on each of the cards. Of course, there's 78 cards, and I wanted to draw all of the symbols individually, but I wanted this border that repeated across all of the cards. And they include a lot of the kind of symbols that people know, like the all-seeing eye and the compass, square and compass. Then the symbols themselves, which is the focus of each card, I wanted it to stand out and make sense with Freemasonry. So I started looking at the tools, like the chisel and the gavel, and chiseling at the rough ashlar and at the stone. So I, in the end, made this technique I drew them on the iPad, but it was like a linocut effect. So it was to show that handcrafted process. I wanted it to definitely look handmade, and that kind of process of or chiseling away at the kind of digital paint. And that was what I did in the end.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance between the geometric perfection, of course, you could get when you're using digital art and making it wholly your own. And I'm looking at examples of the cards and just the colors, as you said, are very vibrant, but the line art doesn't seem it seems wholesome. It's the probably the nicest, the best way to put it is they just seem natural, like somebody sat down at a wax tablet and drew these out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're both very keen on work where you can see the hand of the artist in it.
Good. Yeah.
And Bridie's kind of other work is very much like that. It's almost tactile. It's very there. And I think she's managed to capture that same kind of spirit with these.
Yeah. That's what I wanted. And I know a lot of obviously researching the kind of traditional Freemasonry
Mhm.
imagery and depictions of these symbols, it can be very precise and it's very detailed. But when I was researching, I found it a little bit inaccessible or hard to grasp, hard to understand. So I wanted to bring that into these cards because Jonti's writing also is very accessible, I think. And so I think these cards are a nice kind of route into learning about um, a lot of the symbolism behind Freemasonry and a lot of the ideas behind Freemasonry.
Now, just looking at the examples that I can see here, not all of these would be immediately recognizable to just a third degree craft mason. You guys cast a wider net than just the English emulation work. How far afield did you look? And what other
Right.
influences did you put in there?
I think that the way English is structured is slightly different from the North American model. I don't know about Canada, so I can't really comment, but the research degree is very much kind of considered an integral part of the third degree in England. And in fact, more and more, I think there's quite a drive by United Grand Lodge to promote a stronger link between those two orders. So
Right.
there is some symbolism from the Royal Arch degree in there. Um, I don't think I've gone beyond that.
Okay. I just
Yeah.
I'm just asking because,
What are you looking at in particular?
well, it just there again, you see the triple tau in the triangle on these examples.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah,
that's
yeah,
a Royal Arch symbol. And just so you know, here in Western Canada, the Grand Lodge of British Columbia and Yukon, it is a
yeah,
3-degree system, and the York Rite
yeah,
degrees, like the rest of North America, are kept in a separate 3-degree system. Whereas in England, it's often the mark is its own lodge, and then the Royal Arch degree is its own lodge. Here, the mark, and then the making of a virtual past master, essentially, and then the Royal Arch degree are kept in another series of 3 degrees.
right.
And
Yeah,
then,
okay.
and then there's more degrees, cryptic, and beyond
Yeah,
that on the
yeah,
York Rite side, and then the Scottish Rite side, which is there in England, of course, that's the Rose Croix, which are treated a little different.
yeah,
Here, the concordant bodies tend to be grouped in 2 major and then one smaller group that includes the A
yeah,
and B and all the weird stuff.
yeah.
But it does share a lot of the same symbolism, of course.
Of course, yeah. It's just the structure. I think the way the degrees are structured together is different.
And I am a Royal Arch Mason and a
Yeah.
Scottish Rite Mason, so I'm
Mm.
familiar. I just, again, a lot of times with the concordant bodies, you will go back to these symbols and
Yeah.
bring them forward again to teach a different philosophical lesson. And that's what
That's
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 why
a,
I'm asking.
that's a, yeah. That's the beauty of symbolism, though, isn't it? There are just so many levels to all of them. You can come
Indeed,
back and come back, come back.
indeed, for sure. So this is a 78 card deck, and
Yeah.
Jonti, as you pointed out, this is not a tarot deck. But
No.
whenever anybody sees a 78 card deck, what is going to immediately think of the traditional, most of it now post Golden Dawn tarot approach? Can you highlight some of the differences between what you've done and how a tarot deck would be constructed? Because I think there are some significant differences, and I think calling a contemplation or a wisdom deck is an excellent title.
Thank you.
But there's certainly it's got to be some influence here.
The number of cards is probably the main influence. As I said earlier, I think that kind of sense of randomness, the sense of allowing the universe to speak to you by choosing a random card on a particular day or something. I think that shares a little bit with tarot, this sense that there's a sort of, I don't know, a consciousness to things that don't appear consciousness that kind of can guide us and support us
Right.
is an idea in the background because, as I say, some people they want to keep the cards in order and they want to go through them numerically. That's completely fine. But for me, I wouldn't do that. I would be shuffling them and drawing one out at random to see what the universe had to say to me today. And I feel like that maybe shares some kind of sense of what a tarot card does. But of course, some of the writing that goes with the cards is saying if you chose this card today, that perhaps maybe what you should focus on is this or that, or so they are offering some kind of guidance or suggestion of how you might like to focus or interpret that card, or where you might like to choose the point at which you dive deeper, from which you dive deeper. Because very much these are not, none of this is definitive. There are more than 78 Masonic symbols, for example. We could have gone on and on. And each piece of writing is very short, and every symbol is worthy of a book. So we're not writing the be all and end all of every symbol. What we're offering is just the opportunity to stop, to think. And as I say, I really that this imagery of a diving board is very fitting because this is an invitation to go deeper. And if you have a good springy diving board, you can get deeper. The cards and the writing together are offering an opportunity to do that. And yeah, I think that's the main sort of similarity and difference with the tarot deck, really.
Yeah, I think also it's has similarities in that ritual of sitting down and taking some time, slow down and pull a card and look deeper into the messages that it may be giving. I also really wanted to look at Pamela Coleman Smith's illustrations for that one of the most widely used kind of tarot illustrations that we recognize.
The rider
Yeah,
weight.
just gorgeous.
It's about 90% of global tarot
Yeah,
sales historic.
so beautiful. So that was definitely obviously an inspiration, one of. But the difference for me, not everyone uses tarot like this, but the difference for me is that a lot of people would use tarot to look at what is ahead, and these cards are more saying what is already there and how can we work with that.
Now, your color choices are quite striking. Was there specific inspiration for that? Do you want to
I
talk about
I
that?
just wanted the cards to be cohesive, but be different from each other. I just love the look of the blues and the greens together. So just to explain to anyone who hasn't seen the cards, there are a whole range of blues and greens. And obviously this dark kind of blue on the box and on the book cover with the stars around, just to me, just looks mystical and exciting to open and dive into. It's almost like a little treasure chest to go into. But with obviously I wanted it to look like a lino cut effect, which is like a printmaking technique.
Yeah.
And these are often monochrome. So that's why I wanted to go for the monochrome kind of look.
Nice.
You talked a little bit about working with a fairly limited palette. Bridie was interested to know if there were particular colours associated with Freemasonry. And of course, we talked a little bit about the Blue Lodge and maybe the red of the Royal Arch. But in fact, the blue was the key, really.
And then the images are like bright stars in a dark firmament.
Yeah.
Really.
Always nice.
That creates an interesting contrast.
Blazing stuff.
That's beautiful. All right. Did you, in the guide that comes with them, is there specific instructions for a contemplative process, or maybe a group contemplative process, like a group of guys getting
No,
together?
there are suggestions of how you might use the cards. Just about, and it's basically what I've said, which is just a suggestion to maybe sit quietly, to take a card, to look at it, to read what goes with it, and to spend some time with it. I don't think it's in the booklet very much, but we have talked with Martin. I think even it's on some of the material that he's put out on the website. The idea of using them as, or maybe we did put it, I can't remember. They're potentially really good for lodge education moments and for lodge discussions to initiate a talk, or to even group some together. There are clear kind of groups within them. There are the 3 aprons, there are the 5 pillars, there are the working tools grouped together of the different degrees and things like that. So there's opportunity to use them in groups within the lodge to trigger discussion and learning as well.
It's been my argument for some time, and I'm actually talking publicly about this now, that the tradition of using emblems like the images on the tarot and the emblems we use in Freemasonry is a modern reflection of an ancient art of memory. These are illustrations of memory palaces, to put it. It's a bit inaccurate. But the memory palace tradition is also a reflection of this art of memory, where you're not thinking in words, you're thinking in images, right? I think one could do worse if one is a Mason than to collect this large group of symbols and spend some time contemplating them on their own on a Masonically interesting background, with some guidance from people who've put some thought into what this might mean. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And it's funny because just in the last year, I've been talking about that. I give a talk called Memory Palaces Everywhere. And I argue that both Kabbalah and tarot are a reflection of the rhetorical art of memory. And
Martin's very strong on that. I guess you've read his book, have you?
yes.
He's written, yeah.
Yeah, and that Mosaic Palace was the inspiration for that talk, and it was when he was here for Grand Masonic Day the year before last. Right. That motivated me because I've been considering this for some time, and in my own practice, this is already true, and it's just whether I could present enough evidence that it might be academically considerable that all of these practices fall under the same practice, and I think you guys are contributing to the same tradition with this. It's brilliant.
I'm thinking about, I don't know if this is quite understanding what you're saying, but I'm thinking about like storytelling and how that's passed down through generations. And then obviously when you add some sort of imagery to that, then it's kind of solidifies it even further in your brain. And then also, for example, with these cards, when you add yourself taking part in an activity that you are active in, with the images, with the not stories but the stories that go along, then it's very helpful for I guess remembering and continuing the knowledge language.
Yeah. Yes.
Well,
And
oh, go on. Sorry.
yeah, no, it's just Greek philosophy, Aristotelian and Platonic philosophy, in their own ways, to argue that now a modern man might think and speak in words. Language plays a huge role. But I believe for a longer part of human history, images were more important. And before language was invented, we would spend a lot more time dealing in images. That's why images attach so much more viscerally in our memory and are
Yes.
such a key tool to this practice. You're not necessarily going backwards, but it's like utilizing the way we think in a different manner and giving a language. That's the whole purpose of a lot of people will use these traditional hermetic practices to for different goals, but it's not about divination, although there are tools for that. It's more about finding a different way to think about thinking and think about yourself, right?
Yeah,
And then maybe learn
absolutely.
about yourself, right? By examining these symbols, which are, in a sense, alive outside of us, right? And exist. This won't be unfamiliar to Neoplatonists or anybody who studied Plato. They exist in this world of forms in a perfect manner. And here you guys have represented them again in this
Yeah.
two-dimensional environment for us for our contemplation. And I just
It kind of strikes me that it fits in also with modern theories of how we learn. The
yeah,
idea of kinetic learning and learning through words, through visual, through touch, and in a way, as Bridie said, these cards allow for quite a few of those because we're touching them, we're feeling them, we're physical presence, and they're visual, and there are words as well if we choose to add the words. So they're giving us access to a lot of ways of waking our brains up, if you like.
that's brilliant.
Yeah.
How did you guys here now? We'll stop talking about the deck and start talking about you guys. How did you guys get to meet and start working together on this?
Jonti's
I'm
actually my stepdad.
Oh,
We forgot to
brilliant.
mention. Yeah, Jonti's
Yeah,
my stepdad, and he's been writing about this kind of stuff for ages, and obviously knows that I'm an artist and wanted to present this idea to me. Jonti, I don't know if you want to add to that.
yeah, please.
Yeah, I think there's a tendency to think that, oh, I'd only asked Bridie because I'm married to her mum. But actually, I asked Bridie because I love her work, and I knew she would do this really well. I knew she would bring something really fresh and different to it. So yeah, we've known each other for a while, really. Yeah. So yeah, that's how we met. How the idea came about, I don't know. Ideas are funny things, aren't they? You sometimes just wake up in the morning and you've had an idea. So
Because a project like this, I don't want to beleaguer the point, but a project like this, how would you say it? It's got to be a labor of love. You look at
yeah,
past collaborations, right? You mentioned Smith. I'm more familiar with Crowley and Harris, but it was 5 years during a global conflict. They're corresponding back and forth, maybe 8 years. Took forever to get the ideas put forth. The, this also, I imagine, would have taken some time to put together and then get a final vision that sort of meets approval, right? So you guys want to talk a little bit about that process, or is it still
yeah,
too fresh to discuss at this point?
we can talk about it. Bradley, do you want to go first?
It took such a long time.
They do.
It took 9-ish months for me to finish the designs on the cards, which Jonti at the same time was working on the writing. I don't know if it took you even longer with the writing, Jonti, but then we had the process of designing the box and designing the book cover, which I've never done before. So that was a whole learning curve, but it was really fun. And like I said earlier, when I really love to work with a brief from somebody, from their brain, from their ideas, because I end up creating something completely different that I would have never created by myself. So I love to collaborate with people and work with briefs and interpret that in my own kind of way. And it's quite interesting as an artist to just keep pushing yourself and playing with new ideas, being curious and playful, and just seeing what you can come up with. So yeah, I would have never thought by myself to do a deck of cards similar to tarot that isn't tarot but for Freemasons. And so I really liked that Jonti came to me with this idea, but it took a lot of work to learn and understand about all these things, because there's so much behind all these symbols.
Hmm.
So yeah, Jonti, I don't know if you want to speak about your experience with it.
Yeah, sure. For me, it's a bit different because as a writer, I'm much less used to collaborating. I spend a lot of time by myself and in my own head as a writer. So that was new for me, and I think probably really good for me too, because it made me kind of slow down and listen more and things, which I think, yeah, I don't get to do that much and should probably do more. And Bridie and I had various talks on the phone and some face-to-face meetings when that worked, with family get-togethers. We'd do a few hours and look at symbols, or I would send her examples of renditions of the pillars, or the master's chair, or all these kind of strange things that were new to her.
Yeah.
And she would then have to have the job of, like, I might send her 10 different examples of a rendition of a particular symbol, and she would have to her own way through that. So we would meet and talk about that. We also, in fact, I have to give credit where it's due, because Bridie's mum, my wife Jo, suggested that we did a fun Kickstarter campaign.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh no, I don't know if I want to do that and things. But these things cost money as well. So we did do that, and that took a lot of work, and kind of took the lead on that. So she worked hard on that. And we did do a Kickstarter campaign, and we reached our target, and that kind of helped pay for most of our expenses, which was great. But yeah, that was hard work, and that was a process that took a good few months to get that right. And this sort of whole process of working out how to do that and how to engage with people was an interesting exercise. But the cards themselves, yeah, I guess overall it probably took a year or so and then it took a few months to get them printed and find printers and all this sort of stuff. So I guess we're probably not far off a year and a half in the whole process.
Nice. What has the reception been like? Have you guys heard positives and negatives? I'm quite
It,
far away from the center of English Freemasonry,
yeah,
right? I'm
yeah,
about as
yeah.
far
So
as you get.
yeah, we're not that close ourselves. So they've only just recently started going out. We had a list of backers from the Kickstarter.
Of course.
So the cards were sent to Lewis Masonic. Lewis Masonic are acting as our distributors for this. And so I sent the list of all the backers and their addresses to Lewis Masonic. And over the last couple of weeks, they've been sending them out. So feedback is coming in slowly. It's all been positive so far. People saying they're delighted with them. And one guy wrote to me yesterday and he said they're beautiful, and I've already incorporated them into my daily practice.
Nice.
So his daily routine, he's using the cards, and that's lovely to hear, of course. Yeah, it's all been positive, but there hasn't been that much yet. So
Right.
one guy told me he'd put up a couple of TikTok videos, but I haven't been able to find his TikTok, so I haven't seen
Yeah.
them. So I don't know.
We also, as part of the Kickstarter, we had some smaller, not prizes, what are they called, Jonti?
Rewards, are they? Or
Rewards. So we had some prints that went out of some of the cards, and some kind of gift cards that went out, and some other things. So the people who supported us on the Kickstarter have been being trickled these little teasers, and we've had some really good response. And we also were just on the day or the day before of the last day of our Kickstarter, we were a little bit off our target, like we hadn't quite reached it yet. And somebody generously donated the final amount that we needed, because she just really wanted to see these cards become a reality. So that was really nice of her. And she's been emailing us some lovely things and posting on Instagram as well. And I think she also, I think it's her husband that's a Freemason, Jonti.
Yes,
So
that's right.
people have been getting them for gifts for other Freemasons that they know of. And we've also had some nice feedback from people that aren't Freemasons, surprised about how much they can relate to the cards and the messages, even without knowing that much or being necessarily that interested in Freemasonry itself, but just surprised that these cards relate to the world in general.
Nice. Nice. I'm not sure how I missed it. I was not aware until Nick made me aware, and I was just like, "Oh, look at these," because
Mm.
I have dozens of decks, and some of them remain wrapped. And part of the tradition, the tarot tradition in certain initiatic societies, is that to achieve certain accomplishment of certain degrees, you will complete your own deck. And
Mm.
so, as you look around, you see so many decks. There's a Masonic tarot deck that I'm familiar with that I have an edition
Yeah,
of,
I've got one. Yeah.
and I quite like it too. Jonti, are you familiar enough to compare and contrast maybe a little bit? Because of course yours
No,
isn't
I'm
a
not.
tarot, but yours isn't a tarot deck. So
Mine's not a tarot. Look, I've actually got one that's not opened because I ordered it and they didn't send it to me, and then they ended up sending me two, but then they didn't want it back. But that's this one. I don't know if you've seen that one.
yes, I got another one too,
Have
another
you?
different
Yeah,
one. Yeah, yeah.
I like it. I, I don't know. I don't really know enough about the tarot, to be honest. But it's one of those things. I always think, well, one day I'm gonna really study this, and I haven't yet. But maybe one day I will.
Okay, then let's talk about that. So this would be editable because I'm not sure how far or how much you want to say. Do you want to talk a little bit about your, both of you, your personal experience, your personal practice, or what that might look like to others that are aspiring to know themselves?
You mean with tarot specifically?
No, just anything.
Oh, anything. Oh gosh, I need a minute to think about that then,
That's
Jonti.
okay. You could draw it with the comparison, just because nothing exists. Here's why I ask. These things don't exist in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
So anything you've studied is going to influence your interpretation of the symbol set and are
Mm,
going to be, if they catch and people will want to know more, they're going to want to study what your influences were to create the symbol
Yeah,
set the way you did it, right? And I'm quite familiar with how much ink is spilt over the popular tarot decks in
yeah,
academia
yeah.
right now. And now, because of the things I study, I'm always looking at 100, 120, 150, 200-year-old documents and being like, who were these people and what did they know about any of this stuff and who were they talking to? Anyway,
Yeah.
that's kind of what I'm asking. Is there
okay,
Okay.
well,
Well,
stories you want to impart? Is
I
there
mean,
some ideas you want to put forth that maybe students of the work writ large would want to know? How's that?
my background. The thing is, I've from a very early age. I don't know. By the age of 9 or 10, my mum, who was a yoga teacher, taught me to meditate and things. And I can't claim to do it every day, but it's something that's been with me all my life. My parents had lived in India, and their bookshelves were had copies of the Bhagavad Gita and various the yoga aphorisms of Patanjali and and more sort of esoteric stuff as well, which I devoured. And so I've had that background. I've been to Buddhist temples and had Buddhist teachers and Hindu teachers, and I've had Jewish teachers and Christian teachers. I've been to synagogues and churches and Sikh gurdwaras, and I've world religions have been my thing all my life, really, along with a kind of great sense of devotion and this kind of belief in unity, in oneness, in that underneath all of our differences, we're the same. I guess one of the first and key teachings that stuck with me was the idea that we're not our bodies, which is a key sort of concept from the Gita, that actually what we are is undying. It's not affected by physicality, and that we live in this world, but we're not of it. So for me, eventually all that kind of weird study, and that included theosophy and various things, that led me to Freemasonry, which allowed me to still have a kind of sense of devotion, a sense of kind of awe, and a sense of this kind of belief in a higher power of whatever, however we want to define it. It gave me a structure in terms of the ritual. It gave me kind of beautiful language, which is important to me as someone who likes language, but it's free of dogma. Freemasonry kind of has this great framework of possibility without necessarily defining it. So it allows a kind of freedom of conscience, a freedom of belief, and a freedom of understanding while still being held in this kind of very nice system of mutual respect and mutual support. That's what's brought me here. And of course, Freemasonry is the idea of symbolism within Freemasonry. That's the key to what Freemasonry is, in a way. We're always pointed towards these symbols, and all these symbols bring us back to how we behave, how we act within ourselves, how we act towards others, and how we relate to this kind of this universal power, this supreme being or whatever, that is the unifying force behind us. So kind of that's where I'm coming from, in a way. Those are my kind of motivations. I'm not interested in telling anyone how they should behave or what they should believe. I just want people to be kind and to understand, to go deep, to look within themselves and find that thing that they have in common with everyone else. Because I believe that if you look deep within yourself, you find other people. And if you serve other people, you find yourself. That's the key. And Freemasonry is, I think, one of the few institutions that still puts service to others as really a kind of high priority key. And I think that's still what sets it apart. And for me, that's a big thing.
Well, that's the religion on which all men can agree.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that phrase. That just hear you talk about it, it's dangerously Unitarian of you. Good for you. Good for
Apparently,
you.
yeah.
Because I think it's like optimism is like that as a revolutionary act. Anyway, I think
Sure,
it's beautiful.
Sure.
Are you still involved in your craft lodge or in the craft?
Yeah, I am, but obviously, I'm living in France. I don't get there very often, but I try and make it a couple of times a year. And ritual-wise, I have a couple of party pieces that they really like me to do. So if there's a call for it, they'll ask me to go, and I'll try and go if I can.
When I make it over to Quater Coronati again, I will be reaching out to see if we can meet. Bridie,
Yeah, I'd love that.
Bridie, I asked, but you haven't answered.
Yeah,
Have you
sure.
collected your thoughts enough to discuss those things?
I have. I have. It was quite funny hearing Jonti talk about growing up in a home where all these ideas were present because me also, and it's just present in some families. We weren't talking about investing, but we had little altars around the house, and we had little rituals and books everywhere and things. So these were the ideas that were also present with me growing up, which is such a vast range of ideas. But I actually rejected that for a long time, and I rejected my kind of spiritual upbringing and spiritual side, and I also rejected my creativity for a long time, and wasn't making art for many years whilst I was living in London. And I think I decided one day it was life in general can be quite overwhelming sometimes. And instead of running from those ideas that I don't know much about and they overwhelm me, and so I want to avoid them, I decided to start just going towards the things that were overwhelming me and just start learning about them. And I started to learn more about spirituality, different ideas, religions, and ways to view the world. And that slowly brought me back to my creativity. I started to, just learn more about these things. And as I learned more about them, I had less fear about them because knowledge, I don't know if someone says this, knowledge is like the opposite of fear. I wouldn't say that I've necessarily dedicated myself to studying any one particular thing, but have soaked up a lot of ideas from a lot of different places. And I tend to soak it up until a point where it clicks for me inside in my brain. So I'm not that good at verbalizing these big ideas, but I just learn about anything I can learn about to the point where it clicks for myself. And that includes a lot of these different modalities, like with tarot. I dabble. I'm in no way an expert. I just Google what the cards mean when I do it. But I enjoy it because it's a way to explore the world that overwhelms me. So that's also what these cards are for. And there's so many other modalities that we can use to explore this crazy world.
Existence is a little overwhelming. And think of all our predecessors who stood on their toes to try and make sense of it for those of us who came behind them. Oh,
Next to them.
and how difficult it was
I know.
to pass this on down to us. But thanks to them, and then we loaded into AI and ask it questions rather than asking ourselves those questions. It's just another form of mirror work, right?
I feel
Yeah.
like at the moment people have gone towards AI and now it's springing back as things tend to do, like the pendulum swinging backwards. People are
Sure.
really valuing these like analog physical items. So that's also why I'm excited in a way to release something like this in this day and age and in this exact moment, because it's the opposite of what's happening and it's getting a little bit more value. It's almost like a record in a world of Spotify. Does that make sense?
Yes, and look, Freemasonry itself is a reflection of a wider society and a certain philosophical idea. And what will our progeny 50 or 100 years from now, what working tool will they create to represent a tool that thinks for itself, or a tool that gives us back what we put into it in a different way, right? In lots of ways, the study of cards like this, of symbol sets like this, is the same study, the same contemplative study it's always been. It's seeking knowledge of the self, right? See
Yeah.
how, however you would put it.
Perfectly
But
put.
thanks again, Jonti and Bridie, for coming. Do either of you have a question for me?
I guess I'm interested in, do you think like mainstream Canadian Freemasons share similar ideas about Freemasonry to you? Do you think, or do you think you're quite unusual in terms of your kind of esoteric bent, if you like?
I think globally, that you're asking specifically about Canadian Freemasons. I would back that up. I think globally, less Freemasons think the way I do specifically about
Yeah,
Freemasonry than
yeah,
should.
yes, yeah,
However, the my idea of freedom of conscience, that's a cornerstone of a polite human society, right? Not just Freemasonry, but it's one of the things that Freemasonry gives to society. Rotational leadership, the idea that people in charge are there because they have the consent of the governed. That this idea, that's the rotational leadership, is something else that Freemasonry has gifted the world. I think, however, as somebody who's below the median age, not just in Canada, but I think across the wider English Freemasonry and colonial Freemasonry, I think the further below the median age you get, the more people think like me. And I don't,
mm,
and it's not specifically my spiritual tradition or my philosophical tradition. The more people think we need a lodge experience that's going to foster spiritual seeking, and we need a third way organization that's going to resist dogma and encroachment by
mm.
monarchists and papists and people who want to set up a new priesthood to control other people because their invisible friend says X.
To be honest, that's always been for me. I always think that's always been a kind of really important role that Freemasonry has played through the Enlightenment and everything. It's like it's held on to something that is really important. That kind of freedom of conscience, freedom of thought, freedom of whatever. Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
And I think you're right. I think we're seeing a new kind of manifestation of that in a way. Yeah.
I'm thrilled to say that in this jurisdiction, I'm free to have the freedom of to express the freedom of conscience and express these ideas. And the work I do reinforces that. And I am continually making all the right people really angry. And I think that's the true test of Masonic leadership, is that if you're not pissing off certain people regularly, you're not doing it
Yeah. I
right.
mean, we're part of a big institution, and we know that big institutions have there's an issue with big institutions
Sure.
automatically, even one as good as Freemasonry. There are issues.
And that,
Yeah.
again, I think the institutional resistance to change is always amusing to me. And I'm constantly saying to young Freemasons chafing at the way the old guys do stuff, I'm just like, make big plans. Do you and make big plans, because the old guys are gonna die. And then it's our institution to do with as we see fit. And
Yeah.
if you think moving it, and I think Freemasonry is probably the best exemplar of a truly philosophically and politically centrist organization and a big tent organization. If you think it's not far enough one way or the other, just bide your time, know yourself, study yourself, and learn your ritual. There are a few things that get you respect in this organization, like being able to recite ritual. Thanks so much for coming. I know it's getting later in your day over there.
Let us know what you think when you get the cards.
Oh,
Yeah. I'd be
certainly.
interested to hear your opinion when you get the actual deck in your hands.
I'll shoot a video to unbox, and then maybe some short meditations on it and post them on my page. And I'll make sure to tag you guys on whatever social media you're on.
Yeah.
You guys have a great day.
Yeah, and you.
Thanks for listening today. You can support the show by liking, sharing, and subscribing on your favorite podcast syndicator. Even more helpful, leave us a review. Coming up on The Mystic Tie, EFC keynote Brother Lon Milo Duquette, EFC 2026 co-organizers Brother Ken Lane and Brother Brett Wolf, and Brother Ike Baker previews his talk at Esotericism and Freemasonry Conference. Stay tuned. We are looking to create a directory of Freemasonic events and publications. If you are aware of something coming up, please let me know by email. In the meantime, check out the Masonic Conference's website at masonicconferences.com. Esotericism and Freemasonry Conference will be held Saturday, September 19th. Our keynote speaker will be Brother Lon Milo Duquette, author of The Tarot Architect. Brothers Ike Baker, Doug Russell, Dago Rodriguez, and Joseph Wages are all slated to present. Get your tickets at esotericmasonry.com. For other events, check out our calendar at mystictie.com, and don't forget to sign up for our newsletter while you are there. Graphics and web hosting are by Artsabo Creative. A special thanks to Organist for our theme music. Happy to meet, sorry to part, and happy to meet again.